The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Monday, January 26, 2026. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Wali Khan, multimedia reporter based in New York, covering state violence and working class America, has been reporting from Minneapolis. Also on the program today, VA ICU nurse Alex Preddy shot dead by federal goons in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Shooting takes place a day after over 50,000 Minnesotans hit the streets. Thousands more joined the strike over the ICE invasion there. Democrats finally to take a stand on funding ICE in this upcoming budget vote. Some Republicans, a few, not many, getting wobbly knees. But in the Senate, Thune still insists on a full government funding vote, including DHS funding. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, says ICE will leave Minnesota if the state hands over sensitive voter roll information. This is how they're determining where they're going. Look at that list of 20 states that have refused to hand over this information, and things will start being clear. DOJ slashes funding and training for youth subjects of sex crimes, or I should say for investigating of sex crimes against children. Got to save money somewhere. 800,000 without power in the wake of Winter Storm Fern. New York State on the verge of joining the redistricting war. FBI agent who tried investigating Renee Good's killing resigns. Immigrant detainees protest inside a Texas camp that is imprisoning a 5-year-old. And Moderna is curbing investment in vaccine trials because of U.S. anti-vax sentiment. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, folks.
Definitely not Fun Day Monday.
Not Fun Day Monday. Emma Vigeland, Sam Seder here. Obviously, over the weekend, the ongoing, the ICE violence has been ongoing. But just another explicit act of authoritarianism, of violence, indicating that the mission of these federal immigration raids and invasions of cities are not a function of public safety whatsoever. I don't know if we're going to play the video of the shooting as we go on in the program. Maybe we will, but I imagine everyone has seen like the different angles.
There's no forensic debate about anything about it.
There really isn't. It happened at 9 a.m. The first video that came out was from a local Minneapolis paper. I just happened to be on Twitter at 9 a.m. So watch this thing unfold. The first video was from across the street where you couldn't get a clear notion of what had taken place. Within hours, drop site acquired the video from the woman in pink or red, who people could see in the first videos on the other side of the scrum, as it were, videotaping. And then as it gets over the course of the day, very quickly, and this is important because Kristi Noem was out there lying, like full on lying. But by the time she got up in front of that podium to lie, there had been so many videotapes circulating, comparing the angles, that before she opened her mouth, the narrative was quite clear what happened. Preddy was in the neighborhood. They talk about him as if he was a protester. He was not protesting. This was not a protest.
Yep.
There was about a dozen people, I think, people in the community, like this is a residential street, who came out because of ICE. And he was one of, at least you could see at least a half a dozen people who were videotaping this. He was standing in the street to get a better view of sight of what ICE was doing. He was also sort of directing cars past him because they had also, like, nobody was clear what was going on, just like people driving. The ICE people, goons, have decided they don't like people videotaping them, came over to shove, the ICE guy shoved a woman who was videotaping and flattened her onto the ground. She had both her hands on the camera. It was not a question of a threat. There was no activity
but that's
except for
the
across the
threat.
street.
But Preddy was also filming. Like
Right.
when we're saying, like, just to bring back to the overarching theme, they are terrified of having accountability. They can't get ahead of the story. Like, there's the killing of that man. I'm blanking on his name.
Keith Porter
by ICE, and there's no video of it, so they can characterize it however they want.
Exactly.
But the reason they brutalized Preddy and the reason they brutalized the woman in that video was because they were filming them.
So the ICE agent shoves the woman down onto the ground. Preddy goes to the woman to try and help her up. The ICE agent then pepper sprays both of them in the face. And Preddy is attempting to protect the woman, and the ICE agent grabs his arm, starts to spin him. Other ICE agents see that this ICE agent has basically tackled now Preddy. So at one point you have like 5 or 6 guys on top of him. They have his arm secured. One of the ICE agents sees that he has a holstered weapon. He pulls the weapon. He says something to the effect of, like, gun, or I got his gun. The only real question at this point, and certainly ICE has not made this allegation, is that as the guy pulls out, I think it was a SIG 30, was the handgun that Preddy was licensed to carry. There are some people who have speculated that that gun went off by accident. And that inspired the other ICE officer who had already drawn his weapon because he heard the word gun. I mean, this is, conjecture a little bit, but just from the video, who knows what was in the minds of them. And he started to fire, and he fired at a minimum 6 shots.
Right. And there's no dispute about whether or not Preddy had his hand on the weapon. The question is if that gun was discharged by accident when it was pulled off of him, or if the shots were fired and there was no firing from that weaponry by the ICE officer that took it off of him. Either way, you'll see when you see the video, of course, I think a lot of people have at this point, he fires multiple rounds into his back. This Preddy was a nurse caring for his community, helping a woman, and these wannabe masculine agents shoot a guy, these cowards shot him in the back as he was trying to help a woman on the street. And to your point about, like, oh, this wasn't a protest, they keep calling everything an operation. Preddy we don't know exactly why he was there, but when you're occupying a city, yeah, everything is a part of your so-called law enforcement operation because you're pulling people out of their cars and terrorizing them on the streets. So anyone that chooses to help apparently is interfering with a law enforcement operation. This is as fascist and authoritarian as it gets.
And so once once they shoot him and 6 or 7 times, it's unclear. I guess we could play this video from after the fact. This would be number 4. You will see that one agent is on the ground searching Preddy, basically yelling, "Where's the gun?" Assuming that there was a gun there. And then, according to the affidavit of a 29-year-old medical, I think, student or internist, they would not let that person go and examine Preddy until they showed their license, which of course they don't have their doctor's license on it, and went there and saw that they were not providing any medical assistance to him whatsoever. All they were doing was counting the bullet holes.
They didn't want him to live.
Well, not only that,
good.
but understand what they were doing. They were trying to manufacture a story so they could get their story straight.
Yep.
This was all about sort of like retconning this situation and trying to figure out how they were going to get out of it. Go ahead. All right, so you hear him yelling, "Where's the gun? Where's the gun?" And then the other ICE agent who had already taken the gun before the shooting started.
Right.
Now, the point of it being that he was holstered, that the gun was holstered, is the way that DHS announced what happened is he brought a gun to a protest and he was armed. The implication being that he was using this gun and waving it in front of the DHS people. And so they wanted to create that fiction. But again, the video came out. There were so many videos that came out. By the time they had announced that, everybody knew it was a lie. I was watching MS Now. They had a couple of the law enforcement, ex-law enforcement types on who said, it's unclear. You didn't appear to be waving the gun or doing any of this, and it's hard for us to trust what DHS is doing. The analysis of all this misses the central point, is that DHS definitely did not want people videotaping them murdering somebody. But there is no leadership that is telling them to do anything differently than what they're doing. When Renee Good was shot, ICE agents and all these federal goons, there was basically one of 2 directives that they could have been given. One would have been, we've shot somebody, we need to back off. You need to avoid engaging with protests or with people videotaping to the extent that you can. Do really go out of your way to avoid engaging. Or the other one is double down, tell them that they should have learned a lesson, and do not change anything you're doing. In fact, get out there and make sure that people don't get in your face anymore.
Yeah, be ready to cover it up faster.
And it's quite clear it's the second. Any talk of this is unprofessional, they don't seem to be trained. I mean, that's all true, but that's besides the point. The point is they are being sent out there to do exactly what they are doing. You can see footage of these guys as they are masked like a gang, supposedly dealing with protesters. One guy's shooting his gun and says, "This is like Call of Duty. It's cool."
Right. And then said boo-hoo to people who were crying after they saw Preddy being shot multiple times in the back. Greg Bovino said, Caitlin Collins of CNN had this statement said that essentially the federal agents that were involved in the shooting, in the killing, there were a bunch of them. They were beating them up like a gang, mass gang. That these agents are no longer in Minneapolis and have been reassigned to other locations for their safety, Bovino had said. Now, let's be clear, they're fleeing state authorities. Just like Jonathan Ross after he murdered Renee Good and shot her and killed her, immediately whisked out of the state. This is what they're pretending is a law enforcement operation when they're acting like the mafia. Yeah, actually, the mafia is probably a little bit
has more rules.
Has more rules.
Here's clip number 5. You can see an ICE agent's first reaction.
Same video.
It's like Call of Duty. So cool, huh? Did you shoot? Did you shoot? Take the shot. If they kick it, you take the shot.
This is just random shooting at people. Tossing in smoke grenades.
They were also, there's
tear
footage
gas
of them brandishing their weapons in the face of journalists, just from yesterday, too.
It just blows that way. Fucking idiots.
Oh, yeah, there's your complete,
well, that's
like,
the part.
okay.
But
now
that's
here
other part, right?
Okay, that took place about an hour after the killing. I would say somewhere around 11 a.m. or so. This is just after the killing. This is a separate thing.
When they said the boohoo part.
Yes, this is just after.
Right.
I believe this is the clapping, guys.
Yeah, sorry, we're having a connection issue, but yes, this is the clapping.
Okay. This is just after Preddy's been shot. You can see that guy clapping there, like our job is done here. Play this again. Going at the bottom of the screen here. And he just turns around like they're so clear.
There he is.
There is no threat. The guy claps and then just walks away, like turns around like we did that. It's stunning.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't the other part that I was referring to, but I mean, you could just take my word for it. We heard after, Renee Good was killed, one of the ICE officers, most likely Jonathan Ross, said, effing bitch. And then what we heard on camera after this was boo-hoo, because people were upset at what they saw in front of their eyes. It's we'll cover this later on, but one of the 7 Democrats in the House that voted to basically, advance this ICE DHS funding increase, because as we played from Pramila Jayapal last week, there was basically an accounting trick with the last budget. So it looks like you're maintaining funding, but it actually is an increase in funding. And there were 7 Democrats that voted to do so. I'll just read their names. I missed one the other. It was Henry Cuellar, who won his primary a few cycles ago against a wonderful progressive Jessica Cisneros by less than 1,000 votes after Jim Clyburn and Nancy Pelosi went down to support him. And he is an anti-abortion, pro-ICE, anti-trans Democrat, voted to advance that funding. Mary Glusenkamp Perez, Jared Golden, Don Davis, Laura Gillen, Vicente Gonzalez, and Tom Suozzi, who is a representative from just a few miles away in Long Island. And this morning he sent out an email to his voters saying that he failed. Quote, I failed to view the DHS funding vote as a referendum on the illegal and immoral conduct of ICE in Minneapolis. That's less than a week ago. So that's how quickly these politics are changing. And too bad you decide to fund the ICE Gestapo instead of seeing what was right in front of your face.
All right, we're going to do a whole thing on the how this has impacted the funding vote as the show progresses. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Wali Khan on Minneapolis in the wake of this shooting. We'll be right back after. We'll be with him after I read these ads that we have. There's a product that I was using for a decade prior to them becoming sponsors. Becomes more and more relevant with every day. Delete Me makes it quick and easy and safe to remove your personal data online when we have things like surveillances, massive data breaches, and frankly, a lot of people looking to dox you or to chill your speech, or it's just a very intimidating time, I think, for a lot of people. I've been using this service for, like I said, at least a decade because of my job. But increasingly, it has value to people, just to everyone. I mean, just in the way that I used to use it, but also in terms of things like phishing and identity theft. It really is key. A lot of the scams that you get in terms of phishing have very little to do with technology. They have everything to do with like some type of social engineering. When people get your names, your family's names, all this, et cetera, that they can buy from a data broker at any time, they can use this to contact you through your email, make it seem like there's somebody that knows more about you than a random stranger would. That's how phishing attacks happen. It's easier than ever to find that personal information. You go to these data brokers, your address, your phone number, your family members' names, et cetera. And then sometimes they'll combine this with stuff they find on the dark web. With Delete Me, you can protect your personal privacy or the privacy of your business from doxing attacks before sensitive information can be exploited. Thanks to Delete Me for sponsoring the Majority Report. Take control of your data. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our audience. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/majority. Enter code majority at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/majority. Code is majority. We will put the link and information in the podcast and YouTube description. Also, sponsoring the program today is Nutrafol. I just had my annual physical with my doctor, and he's like, "Any supplement, anything you're taking?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm taking Nutrafol." He's like, "Really?" He was surprised. He says, "Does it work?" And I said, "It does. It's helping with my shedding." And he told me that his wife, her dermatologist recommended it to his wife.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "Is it working for her?" And he goes, "Yeah, it seems to be." He's a very skeptical guy. But I've noticed it dramatically in terms of the shedding. Nutrafol now offers hair growth supplements tailored to men at every age because the root causes of hair thinning change over time, and your routine should too. Nutrafol for men ages 18 to 49 help improve their hair growth and achieve thicker, fuller hair in 3 to 6 months. New Nutrafol men 50 plus. I was not aware of that. I've been using the other one. The first and only hair growth product specifically formulated for men 50 plus. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. I got to try this 50 plus thing.
Is it butterscotch flavored?
That's the only way. You need to have like a second candy. I've had great experience. It's an old man joke.
Yes. Yeah.
But it has made a big difference. Like you get to be my age and you sort of neurotically check when you're in the shower. You come out, you look at your towel every time. Count. anyways, I've had great experience. Em and I both know women who have had really good experience at this. You can feel great about what you're putting into your body since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified. It's the gold standard and third-party certification for supplements. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed. Automated deliveries, free shipping to help keep you on track. Plus, with a Nutrafol subscription, you can save up to 20% and get added perks to support your hair growth journey. Start Nutrafol today. Make the hat optional. Visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code TMR10, all one word, for $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR10. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR10, one word. Check the podcast and YouTube links, descriptions, I should say, for links, etc. All right, quick break. When we come back, Wali Khan, multimedia reporter based in New York, covering state violence in working class America on the ground in Minneapolis, or what it was like there. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, the Majority Report. Joining us now, Wali Khan, a multimedia reporter based in New York, covering state violence, working class America. Wali, thanks for joining us. And we should just say right up front, you got a little bit of a voice issue because of the tear gas as a little going away gift in Minneapolis. What was the circumstance of that?
Well, that was actually, since that tear gas incident, I've kept safe since then, but it's been like more than 8 days where I've had this respiratory problem. But that was at the Whipple Federal Building, where ICE agents come out in droves and tear gas protesters every hour, actually. And so that night, they started pelting, tear gas canisters at us and flashbangs. And I think all people were doing was that they were gathering around arriving ICE vehicles. And my mask was a little loose, and the density of the tear gas made it, impossible to do the work that I do. And it was blinding, and it was really painful.
What ostensibly is, I've seen tear gas in the context of protests that are, I think, like, authorities are afraid, like, oh, there's 10,000 people or 5,000 or 500 people who are coming to try and attack a federal building or are blocking, roads in the middle of a city. Like, what is the context, and like, what would be the value of just firing tear gas at people who are standing out in front of a detention facility?
Well, it's interesting because one of the days, some of the protesters doused the entranceway to Whipple with water, because a lot of these ICE agents are just like wearing Vans and like Converse, like canvas shoes, and they've slipped and fallen on their asses so many times. So one of the protest tactics is to pour water all over the entranceway where they come out of. And I want to reiterate, the ICE agents outnumber the number of protesters at Whipple. I mean, that on multiple nights, there had to be less than 100 people or less than like 150. And the ICE agents would come out from their cars where they were warming up in the parking lot and suit up, come out. And that day when they were pouring water, they got pissed. I mean, they came out, tear gassed a bunch of people, pepper sprayed, pepper balled people, which is, solidified pepper spray, less lethals that are put in paintball guns and shot out at, on people. And actually, there have been a couple of blindings out of LA recently related to pepper ball. But yeah, their justification is that people are blocking the roadway when they really aren't. We're not seeing like them actually stop any vehicles. The cars still drive in and out of ICE of the Whipple Federal Building. There hasn't been that much impediment. Personally, I probably only saw one protester ever pop a tire of an ICE vehicle, and that wasn't even at the federal building.
Okay. So with that said, tell us what else you saw while you were there. At what point did you get back? Because we had a big general strike on Friday, 50,000 or more people, at the very least, protesting, never mind necessarily participating in the strike. Give us a sense of like what you saw when you were last there.
So I left right before the general strike, the day of, actually. I talked to a bunch of people on the ground during that day, and also who was there yesterday. But there was this general idea from a bunch of reporters that I was talking to that, you know, protesters were standing there, they weren't doing anything. And you see this pattern emerge out of Minneapolis, and I was there for almost 2 weeks, right after the killing of Renee Good, is that, you know, they'll go up to protesters and say, back up. And, you know, they'll say, don't move, or they'll say, move away. And they give these like contradictive like instructions where you're like destined to fail if you're just in proximity of an ICE agent. And so there's a lot of tear gas that they love using. But at the same time, they're shooting off less lethals at protesters, and some of my friends and colleagues had gotten injured. But by and large, I think the retaliation against reporters has gotten more obvious on the ground. Just yesterday, even at the Home Suites Hotel, where the Department of Prisons pointed a gun at two reporters, Ethan Noah Roy and Sean Beckner Carmichael. And, you know, they kept asking everybody, show me your fucking press badge. But they'll also say things like, we don't give a fuck if you're press. And so there is this very mixed messaging that actually really puts a lot of reporters and protesters at danger, because they don't know what their instructions are. And even if they are, they're like not legal instructions. They're not breaking any laws.
There's this notion that these are, you know, they keep saying you're impeding an operation or law enforcement operation. That was also the excuse that they used to justify the killing of Alex Preddy. Can you describe what a so-called operation looks like with ICE? Because it seems like it's kind of, they're occupying the city, so the entire area is supposedly an operation.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. A lot of the enforcement at one point was concentrated on East Lake Street. And, you know, you could literally just see them going past all the time. They'd be stopping at these restaurants or turning into a neighborhood to terrorize people and to gas them when, you know, they blow their whistles or they are followed. But, you know, I just want to remind, you know, your viewers that a lot of this language that we're seeing come out of the White House and DHS is couched in the NSPM 7 memo that dictated a very broad set of rules for what could be counted as domestic terrorism. So I posted a video last week where me and another photographer were tracking ICE, and we were on the rapid response chats, and you know, ICE jumps out of their car and they say, you know, if you fuck around, you're going to get arrested. And the thing is, the one thing he said that caught my attention was at the end, he says that we've got your plate, we've got your name. It's going to be, I think he said something about there being a database. And in Maine, where there is an extensive ICE operation happening there right now, officers were seen talking about a database, about people who are just filming. So when an ICE operation happens, they turn into a neighborhood, knock on doors, and they detain somebody, and they don't really check for papers. They're just like stopping people and just taking them. And so they see people filming as impeding on their operations, which is insane.
I think we actually have that video in Maine of the database, that exchange. It has been quite clear that they're videotaping. I mean, we know that Jonathan Ross, the killer of Renee Good, was videotaping her. And, you know, these guys are not doing it maybe some of them are for their like home movies, but they're doing it because they are intending to use this material at one point. Here's that exchange that you were talking about. This took place up in Maine, and you're saying you had a similar one in Minnesota. Let's watch this.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist. So
We're videotaping you? Are you crazy?
That exchange is pretty revealing. I mean, regardless of questions of like, that doesn't seem terribly professional to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. He's telling the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and that was consistent. What we saw on that videotape was consistent with what you experienced down in Minneapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually video of that on my Instagram too. Like they literally get out of a car. I wasn't even driving, and they said, we've got the plate, we've got the vehicle. So I don't think they're just making a database of people. And, there has been so many reports of them using, extremely flawed facial recognition AI to identify who's a migrant and who isn't. But the added aspect of that is that if they have a database of vehicles and plates, it's kind of like the police's lien system, like when they can look up plates, but they actually need a reason to. These federal agents don't need a reason. And, the risk is elevated for me because I'm like one of the few, reporters on this beat who is a migrant. It was terrifying because it does raise questions about, press freedom and like just stuff about the 14th Amendment. Your people are getting arrested, pulled out of their cars simply for following ICE agents. But like, there is nothing illegal about that.
Give me a sense of like how much time did you spend with these rapid response networks in Minnesota, in Minneapolis? I wonder, what your impressions were of these networks, if they are networks. I mean, just how would you characterize what you're seeing there, and both from a sort of a tactical standpoint, and also just in terms of like the sentiment.
This is probably the most robust rapid response I've ever seen. What journalists do is very similar to what the rapid responders are doing, in the sense that they're spotting these vehicles, looking up the plates, and then, but the difference is rapid responders are almost always on a call on signal, and they're people doing plate checks and giving information about where exactly an ICE vehicle was spotted. And when you're out following them, there was a case where me and a couple of reporters spotted an ICE vehicle outside of a neighborhood, inside of a neighborhood called Longfellow. We pull up next to the vehicle, and he rolls down his window, and he has a live headset on, but he's unmasked. So that sometimes means that they're a supervisor instead of just like a regular agent. And we asked, are you ICE? And he was like, none of your fucking business. And so we noticed that there was a cage fitted into the back and like lights, but also like this like front ram that people like law enforcement uses to do pit stops. And we ended up following, this officer for 20 miles north of Minneapolis. And that's something that you see all the time as well, that a lot of these agents aren't even getting out of their car. They're just leading people on wild goose chases with, no result. And it's scary because you have to wonder if that's a decoy. We end up driving 20 miles north of Minneapolis, and then a cop car starts following us, and the ICE agent peels off into the shoulder. And some of the rapid responders are telling me that sometimes ICE agents lead trackers and journalists on these chases to a county that's friendly to them, like where the sheriff is friendly to them, and have the cops deal with you. So there is an extreme elevated risk because I've seen ICE agents go into a neighborhood, throw tear gas, take people, beat people, tear gas, like pepper spray them when they're on the ground. And, you know, there's nothing that people can really do except like throw snowballs and like scream at them, which are like, you know, it's nothing compared to the domestic terrorism language that we're seeing come out of the White House. But that's what I've been seeing with rapid response, that people are constantly on the call. They're going to businesses to patrol, even at -35 wind chill weathers, to do foot patrol or to drive past businesses during opening and closing and during pickup and drop off time for schools. So we're seeing like one of the most organized, decentralized, hyper local rapid response that we really haven't seen like anywhere else. And a lot of that infrastructure is probably from 2020.
I've heard some very good stories about what happened in Charlotte, and that folks were very good about driving ICE out of there and making ICE leave before they had hit anything close to their quotas, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly, the invasion of Minneapolis was of a size, I think like sort of unprecedented size up to this point, anyways. But what is it? Do you have any sense of like what accounts for the superlatives you're suggesting about Minneapolis? Like what was it? Is there something unique to Minneapolis, or is it simply temporally speaking, we're at a point where people are a greater number of people are engaged? Is it the size of the city? Is there something, do you think, as, I don't know, a spirit in Minneapolis in terms of the community or the relationship between the immigrant population and other Minnesotans? What do you think it is?
I think a big part of it is that Minneapolis just can't catch a fucking break. I mean, the fact that Renee Good was killed so close to where George Floyd was murdered, there's so much anger that still lingers over that. And I think, the infrastructure is also good. First of all, it's actually really easy to get around in Minneapolis. If something like this happened in New York, to get from like the Bronx to like Jackson Heights is going to take 40 minutes. The thing about Minneapolis, the thing about these ICE raids is that if you're 5 minutes out from it, you're able to do whatever your role is, which is either you try to follow them or honk or warn, or if you're a reporter, go and chase after it and document it. And the other thing is that there are a lot of people who care, and how emboldened right-wing figures are in flooding the zone in Minneapolis, and how emboldened they are to do a pro-ICE march and try to burn a Quran like Jake Lang tried to do. And he's tried to do this in Dearborn, Michigan. This is not his first time. He's always foiled. And I think a big part of this is that people there understand that more than 90% of Somalis in Minneapolis are citizens. So even from a numbers perspective, the federal enforcement is so brazen, so much of this has this authoritarian aesthetic to it, that there's so much spectacle that I think people can't look away. One of Renee Good's neighbors was a Trump voter, and one of the most interesting videos I've seen out of it was an interview with him where he expresses extreme doubts about his belief. And so if this is moving the needle for conservatives, I think you can tell whatever you're seeing on the news, it's so much worse on the ground.
Yeah, can you?
I just wanted to on the 90% thing.
Okay.
Because I think this is interesting, because I've read theories that the administration did not realize there were 90% of Somalis. I mean, we laugh about it, but I mean, this is not hard to believe that 90% were citizens, and so you have a population where you've got these ICE thugs going in there, and they assume they're just looking for Somalis.
Yep.
But 9 out of 10 of those are citizens, not legally in the country, not documented, not going through a process. They're citizens. And so, I mean, it's probably 90% of the people they're harassing there and going on and thinking that they've got like a win, turns out to be citizens. And these are all people with families. These are all people who are, integrated into the community, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, this is, I wonder how much that like sort of the tripwires they're hitting are pulling the community together and tighter than one would have expected. I mean, even prior to these multiple killings, murders.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I think a big part of this too is that we have to be realistic about this resistive movement, which is that, we didn't see the world, the country rally around the killing of Jamie Alanis Garcia out of California when he fell off a 30-foot building when he was chased by ICE. We didn't see nationwide rallying around Silverio Gonzalez, who was killed in Chicago, and there was footage. Even for Silverio's killing, it was such strikingly similar circumstances to Renee Good. I think a big part of this, and PBS NewsHour actually did an interview with a St. Paul cafe owner or something, or somebody who goes to the cafe, where there are, paintings of Renee Good on the wall. And she very blatantly said that, and then paraphrasing here, that she could ideate or conceptualize the sort of violence that ICE is doing because Renee was a citizen and she was a white mother. So when we look at this like these responses to these social movements, I think it's like really important. And and as a migrant, I've seen this sort of response where people are so much more sympathetic. The press is so much more sympathetic to Minneapolis because a citizen got killed. And I think implicitly there's this idea that if somebody's undocumented and they weren't even supposed to be here in the first place, then the death is no big deal because it was supposed to happen. So I think that's kind of my take on Minneapolis, but the resistance there is no less robust for it.
It's a great point. You mentioned that there are some areas where maybe they drive to a police precinct or part of Minnesota where there's more sympathetic police. What has been your experience? What have other journalists and activists experienced with Minneapolis PD in particular as well, in resistance to ICE?
So it's interesting. Minneapolis PD, there was that night they shot a man in the leg, and people were taking to the streets. And I remember this huge presence of Minneapolis PD and protesters shouting that they haven't changed since George Floyd was killed, that they think that, I think one protester was like, you think you're fucking better than these ICE agents, you're just more of the same. There has been a very heavy MPD response. And, and I think a big part of it too is that they don't really know what to do. They kind of stand around. They're also tear gassed by ICE agents. It happened in Chicago too. But by and large, I think maybe ideologically, a lot of these cops are more similar to an ICE agent than they are to Alex Preddy or Renee Good. So you're seeing MPD still enact violence and arrest people in Minneapolis under the guise of law and order. But, at the same time, Jacob Frey goes on TV and says a couple of bad words and they're making, New York Times profiles on him. So.
My other question for you is schools. We're hearing reports about ICE agents stationing outside of schools in Minnesota. I mean, I'm just to plainly say what it is. It's masked men, unidentified men, stationed outside of schools and kidnapping children This is from the party that says they care about protecting children from abuse. So how widespread is this practice based on your 2 weeks in the area?
Pretty prevalent. I mean, to a point where drop off and pickup time is a really tense moment for a lot of parents and a lot of citizens and um, a lot of children too. You know, they're stopping by at parks, nearby kindergartens, nearby schools, and churches. Um, and I remember going to a church in St. Paul where the kids are just like looking out the window, and there's an ICE vehicle just like literally a block away, just sitting there, and they'll make like heart signs at whoever takes a photo at them. And so there's like this aspect of like they're just waiting there. Sometimes they don't even do anything, right? Like the day Renee Good was killed, there was this huge altercation in one of the high schools in Minneapolis. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to on the ground have told me that like, yeah, they wonder if, their school district is going to go online. And as somebody who went to school during COVID, it is just not the same. Like you're missing out on a lot. And we're seeing that. We're seeing ICE presence at schools and churches. And the community response is really just robust in the sense that there's always a bunch of people there during pickup and drop off time.
What else, as we wrap up here, what else do you think we should understand about what's happening there? Is there anything that we've sort of left on the table, or do you have any thoughts as to what's going, where ICE is headed next, both either geographically or in terms of their tactics?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's enforcement already happening in Maine, Portland, Maine. I think the numbers are, I haven't checked it in a while, but in 3 days they took like 100 people. And that's a lot. And I think, we need to have this sort of like the same reaction Americans had for Renee Good and Alex Preddy getting killed should be scaled up to the 800 people missing from Alligator Alcatraz. Like what happened to that? Like, I feel like we just moved on, that's a big deal. And I think that, the Trump administration mentioned that California and New York is next. I've spoken to a lot of folks in Minneapolis who are both citizens and also Somali migrants who believe that this will end in the midterms. I don't know about that. I think we're in for many, many years of this. I think the window has moved. And by and large, despite the resistance that we're seeing, Americans could possibly get used to this. And I think that's a very scary thought that people aren't considering, that this could be the thing that happens for many years and the midterms aren't going to save you. Maybe it could be a mitigating factor, but this sort of enforcement is exactly like ICE is doing exactly what they were designed to do. And there's no amount of training. There's no amount of those 7 Democrats who voted for more funding for ICE for training or whatever. It's so ham-fisted. It's so brain dead. Like we can't vote this out. And I think the resistance needs to really ask itself what it's willing to put on the line for an occupational force in their city.
Wali Khan, we will link to your Instagram channel and
some great photography on there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Really appreciate you coming on and giving us an update, and hope that your respiratory things get a little better. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, folks. Let's play a little. I want to play a couple of clips of what took place on Friday.
Yeah.
By the time we had gotten off of air, things had really started to pick up in terms of like the strike. It's hard to assess what a general strike looks like in terms of what's not happening, right? you can look at numbers after the fact and say like, oh, nobody shopped that day. One day is a quick blip. People didn't come into work. And you would think in the context of like public demonstration with temperatures at anywhere from 10 to 10 below, that's cold. Like that's cold.
That's feel in your bones cold.
That's it takes you, I mean, I'll walk to work in the teens or the early 20s, but it takes me like half a block until like I start to realize like, oh, even my knees are cold right now, even with my like lined pants.
Yeah, as a North Dakotan, I can say that's even cold for people from that part of the world.
But here are images. This is on Friday, the day before, less than 24 hours before Preddy was murdered. Killed.
What murdered?
I mean, I don't know what the legal term would be.
Lock me up if you can't say murdered.
But here's aerial shots of this. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's crazy.
This is from BT Newsroom.
There's no audio on this.
There's no audio on this. It's just drone footage. But this goes on, and then it goes around the corner, and there's even bigger numbers.
Right.
It really...
And there are also, I'm sure, people that were striking that just, stayed home.
Well, exactly.
Like,
I mean,
right.
this is I mean, that's the thing is like, this is a protest here. Here is another image. Let's go to the, okay, you can see around the corner, and it just keeps going down. And then it turns the corner from there too, I think. But let's go to that other shot, and you can hear people chanting. And again, this is another different angle. This a different portion of that protest. They're cheering. What do you want? Ice out. When do you want it? Now.
It's amazing. This general strike stuff, you're hearing more and more talk about this spreading across the country, and I really, really do hope it does, because
there were people protesting in Iowa over the weekend. Prior to, I don't know if it was in the wake of the Preddy killing, in Idaho, in Boise, Idaho, I think it was actually. There was like 3,500 people calling for a general strike. I mean, you're just seeing it all over the place.
Yeah, and it's just really, I mean, with the No Kings demonstrations were, I think, a good place for people to get their energy out. But this is a step in the direction of like an actual uprising and changing of our system, because it involves.
I just want to say real quick how you know is because Tim Walz and Mayor Fry didn't support it.
It is a moment of like both of class consciousness and using that power to challenge the authority, and seeing these things as inextricably linked. Like, we've been told for a long time that you could, for some reason, separate identity politics or white supremacy from capitalism when you're standing up against it. But you're seeing that white supremacy and capitalism are intrinsically linked, and the systems of economic domination are similarly the systems of racial and ethnic supremacy that show themselves in a variety of different forms. But in this instance, it's immigration law. It's what Wali was talking about, the concept of citizenship, how we have tiers for people's rights and what they are allowed to have in this country based on pretty arbitrary kind of definitions, and make it very difficult for certain people to be citizens because we want to, that they're more easily exploitable. in that way. And so I that is a very hopeful development out of this weekend, in spite of, obviously how horrible everything is.
Nameless in Minnesota says, keep in mind, many of us did not go to the protest because we were still patrolling our neighborhoods.
Right.
Again, the numbers extraordinary there. And I think we're going to see more of this, obviously, in the wake of the killing of Preddy. All right, we're going to take a break, head into the so-called fun half, wherein we will play more footage out of Minnesota. Also, we're going to talk about how things have changed dramatically in terms of the vote. I mean, on Friday, we were saying, in regards to those 7 Democrats who voted for the funding, and it's really, let's be clear, Hakeem Jeffries did not whip those people. Now, he may not have any control of what Jared Golden does, because Jared Golden's retiring. Although,
make a point.
Well, I got to imagine, if I had to bet, Jared Golden is not going to have a job that has nothing to do with Congress when he goes into the private sector.
He's
like,
the co-chair of the Blue Dogs, and he's a military guy, right?
Of course. This guy's not going to go like, you know what? I've always wanted to pursue painting, or I'm going to do some local, I'm going to do cabinetry work. I'm going to, one more year of my apprenticeship. No, I would bet you just about everything I own that Jared Golden is going to have some job where he is going to utilize his access to Congress, lobbying, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And Hakeem Jeffries has the ability to make that very difficult. I mean, presumably he's going to be Speaker of the House come January, and they can make all sorts of rules about, like, you know what, Jared Golden, we don't have enough credentials for you to come on the Hill, whatever it is. There are ways. We should also say, like, Rosa DeLauro sits on the chair of the Appropriations Committee. There were ways in which to make the DHS funding more prominent rather than to roll it into the minibus. And we were saying on Friday, these people who are voting for this, it's as if they think that, like, they're voting on what ICE has done. And that's it. That's going to be end of story. As opposed to, like, we're only a year out and we've seen what ICE has become in that year. Where do you think they're going to be in 10 months? This is just the beginning of this, folks. This is just the beginning of this. There's going to be more people they kill. I mean, the concentration camps they have set up, and we're going to play some footage of what's going on in, like, Texas and what's going on. I mean,
we have no idea how many people are dead in those camps. No idea.
I know people representing people in Berlin, New Hampshire, appropriately, where these are basically like semi-torture facilities, because they have a lot of people who are within process. In other words, I am getting my green card, or I am being adjudicated for refugee status, or asylum status, or I have been in an administrative process. In other words, they are here legally. They are not citizens, but they are here legally. They are within a legal process. And what happens is ICE picks them up, shoves them into these concentration camps. We'll play footage of some that's leaked out. Subjects them to torturous conditions as a game of attrition, essentially. Let's play this number 16. A game of attrition so that they can get these people to say, you know what, I give up any rights I have to the process I'm already engaged in. What is it?
This is 16?
No. I want the, where's the footage from inside the camp? We don't have that? Okay.
I think
I thought that was where people are sleeping on the.
This is an ICE agent admitting what you're saying about legal picking up people who are in the process.
Okay, let's play this then. Okay.
Like, she's legal. Like, she has a work permit. Yeah, but that doesn't make her legal. So anybody who has a pending application, they get a work permit, okay? Or pending court proceedings. Because of that, so our direction right now, I'll just kind of explain this to you. Our direction right now is to take any of those kind of people into custody so they can get through their court cases faster.
Okay, so he's claiming that we get their court cases faster. She's got her work permit. She is in pending process. They are bringing people in, and the guy says so they get their court cases faster. No, what it is now. Let's play that footage of them lying on the floor in the facility. This is footage that has been leaked
22.
out. This is footage that is leaked out, and of course, it's very difficult to get this kind of footage.
It's in Baltimore.
This is in Baltimore, in the Baltimore field office. These are the conditions that people are living in. Now, in Berlin, New Hampshire, my understanding is they don't have blankets, but they put them in scrubs, and we're dealing with temperatures of like 10 degrees outside. If you don't put heat on in these facilities, you're talking about 30, 35 degrees. But play this footage. So now we know they're taking people who are in process. They have a work permit. They're waiting on a hearing, whatever it is. They put them in these type of facilities, essentially torture or abuse, wherever that line is. I don't think it makes a difference, frankly. And the idea is like, it's up to you. You really want to wait around for your court case? Because that may not come for a while.
Miren cómo nos tienen aquí. Miren qué migración que nos tienen. Y gente que estamos legales, gente que no estamos legales, gente que está perdiendo su familia, nos están secuestrando, nos tienen en un depósito aquí en Baltimore, nos tienen en la 31 Huskin. Baltimore.
Están golpeados, está en la cara.
Los golpearon a un señor.
Están golpeados, no han dado nada.
Ya no aguantamos, nos tienen aquí con más de 10 días sin bañarnos y aguantando hambre.
So that's what's going on here.
I can't translate all that. The last thing was about hunger.
All
right. Well,
yeah, we'll have more to say in the other half.
The other half.
Yeah.
Formerly fun half. But this is what's going on. So people should understand this is what's happening. And all right. Well,
was it? I mean, what did we? I can't remember if it's just like something I watched myself or if we covered it on the show. Did we cover the story? Someone, a lawyer was saying how a mother had to suck the pasta off or the pasta sauce off. Yes, of every
PBS.
Because they have no baby food. Suck because the child can't digest the pasta sauce. Suck all of the sauce, but with her mouth, off of pieces of pasta to feed to children.
Concentration camps.
Yep.
Not metaphor. Description.
No. Definitionally.
Lastly, let's just read this from Midwest Leftists. Here from Minnesota, if you're wanting to read this during the show so people get a sense of what the environment ICE is creating, we are white Midwestern. The violence is so egregious that the children are in no way shielded from our reality. Our 7-year-old son, knowing the dangers they pose, came home and told us, if ICE comes to my school, I will protect my cousin, 5 years old, because she has more life to live. Our neighbor hasn't sent their 5-year-old to school for 2 weeks because they're terrified of their child being taken at the bus stop. My partner works for the school district, and ICE is scoping out all the bus stops to take kids for bait. My partner's coworker was also disappeared overnight, now leaving his wife as the sole provider for 2 daughters, one of them requiring brain surgery as she suffers from seizures, which was the main reason they came to the United States. He was shipped to Texas in less than 24 hours. All right, we're going to head into the fun half of the program. You know the deal. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, justcoffee.coop. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leck Media universe?
Yeah, Hassan joined us on the Jacobin show last week to talk about who's more democratically responsive to the outcries of the people they represent, Mohammed bin Salman or Chuck Schumer. And you have to tune in to see who we decided on. And I don't think this past weekend has changed that calculation. Check it out, Jacobin show. Go subscribe to Jacobin Meg on YouTube.
All right, quick break and fun half.